Before we even start the video, I want to point out that watching this unironically pissed me off. Let me know how much you like the Daikun Rage.
Good evening, everyone. Phil here. Welcome to the Daily Wrap for what was Friday, the 22nd of March, 2024. Also known as Dragon's Dogma 2 launch day, a day when I'm finally breaking up this marathon of Baldur's Gate and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth with something different, a brand new release that you guys said you wanted to see, as opposed to the other new releases that came out today. This was the one that you picked, and so I played it all day long. To give you all a recap, to start today was a fun level 1 podcast, which talked a little bit about Dragon's Dogma 2 and its reception, but also about a ton of gaming news.
I know I'm starting off a bit strong here, but what do you mean breaking up Baldur's Gate 3 and other RPGs with a brand new game? DSP, Dragon's Dogma is another RPG. I thought you said just a few days ago that your main issue currently is that there are too many RPGs. In what world would playing another one make any sense? And I know I'm getting ahead of myself here because you'll just say in a few moments that this is just a one-time stream and that he's gonna get other games out of the way before moving on to Dragon's Dogma 2, but goddamn. Didn't we just finish editing and putting together a video where he spent most of the time whining about RPG burnout and blamed the low revenue and engagement on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on just that?
Call it a nitpick, but this guy needs to start writing scripts. I don't even care if he reads from the scripts, but there's something wrong with the way this guy explains things and also his vocabulary. Personally, I like to write, and I feel like writing helps me be more concise in my speech. The mountains of ums and uhs would be reduced dramatically if he wrote down what he was going to say ahead of time. Likewise, his vocabulary is shit tier. For someone who says he's inspired by AVGN, apparently the only takeaway was, use swear words. You do realize that James Rolfe has a vocabulary, right? He used literary elements like alliteration in prose. Know what else he used? A fucking thesaurus. Phil gives me Elon Musk vibes when he says shit like, I've mastered talking. It doesn't mean anything when you say it. It just makes you sound like an ego-bloated jackass. Likewise, your actions betray your words. Whatever few of them you can manage to string together in a drunken slur of room temperature IQ takes, that is.
I mean, there was stories about Starfield and its botched ending, and how Bethesda now develops games in these giant, bloated places where no one can get anything done. There was a whole article about Kotaku falling apart at the seams. There was an article about Larian Studios saying they're no longer going to make D&D content ever, among many other stories. So I hope if you're interested in my day off segment to find out what I did yesterday when I was not here streaming, but also a lot of game news covered, check out the podcast from this morning. Okay? Now, basically I played Dragon's Dogma 2 all day long. About 5.5 hours of gameplay today.
My eyes are bloodshot from unyielding rage.
This is a new feeling. Pride in someone else. Unfortunately, it's overshadowed by all this unyielding rage!
I absolutely hate the way this guy talks. We're like a minute into the video and all he's doing is reiterating the fucking schedule. Yes, jackass, we know you do a level 1 copecast every fucking day. You shitpost your schedule among your videos on Twitter and on the community tab several times a fucking day. And now you're sat here like a fat drunk child going over it again. Fuck! Get to the goddamn point already. Also, what news? You don't have any worthwhile opinions on anything. Your news segment is reading Twitter shitposts, pretending to care, and giving misinformed opinions about fucking everything.
More like he gets his news exclusively from Twitter headlines, not actual articles. You'll never catch me giving mainstream game journalist sites approval for their work ethics, but credit where credit is due. When they're not busy pushing an agenda, they can at least give you the facts, and most of them in some cases. DSP just sits and reads headlines and then gives his opinion on entire topics without even the full context. Remember the Stellar Blade cope a few episodes ago? Well, there have been multiple gameplay trailers out by now, and if you think DSP is gonna go back and add to his baby rage rant where he threw a bitch fit over Eve's ass jiggle and talk about the actual gameplay of this game, then you're dead wrong. I'm sorry to say.
In the unfortunate event that somebody in your chat does correct you or call you out on one of your stupid observations, you either give excuses or straight up ban them. And you're entertaining the idea of starting a fourth, yes, a fourth goddamn channel to talk about news? People give news stations shit all the time for obvious bias and not checking their sources, but you're too fucking lazy to check the validity of anything unless it's related to food.
Okay? Here's what I have to say. So far, the story is intriguing and gets better the further in you get. First, it's very basic, but it's getting more intriguing when you get to the capital city later on in the game. The The gameplay elements are sound and interesting. Action-based RPG as opposed to so many more slower turn-based games I've been playing recently. This one being fully action-based is actually a breath of fresh air. Plays very similarly to what I remember from Dragon's Dogma 1. Like, I actually jumped right in and started playing it. And, oh yeah, you jump, you climb, get to the weak point, stab it there a million times, you know, while your party is basically buffing and doing things. I was like, yeah, that's...
I'm not sure if you can pick this up yet, but I wrote this when I was pissed off. This is another instance of DSP acting like a fake fan. I don't care about gatekeeping fandoms or anything like that, and if you do, go away. However, he's a fucking tourist with damn near everything outside of Street Fighter. I remember that Code Veronica playthrough he did, and he was asking, wait, how does Chris know how to fly a jet when Chris Redfield is ex-fucking military? I'm going to assume that someone who used to fly jets in the military knows how to fly a jet after leaving the military. He just gave the most surface level analysis of Dragon's Dogma. Pro tip, I liked the first game. Wirch gives me shit all the times I raged at the game, but I really did like it. Everything he fucking said applies to the first game. If you remove him naming the game and listen to the description alone, you'd be hard pressed to figure out which game he's talking about. It could even be Monster fucking Hunter. This is what I mean with this guy's vocabulary and ability to describe something. It's childlike. Also, while writing this, obviously, I had to watch the video and there's someone in his own comments who points out how he has a fucking computer and thereby access to thousands of other games he could be playing. This dude is chasing AAA clout harder than a junkie sucking dicks at the bus stop. What the fuck did I write? Also, this dude is chasing AAA clout harder than a junkie sucking dicks at the bus stop for his next bump.
Also, what do you mean that this is a breath of fresh air for being a completely real-time action game? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is also real-time, and that one has been doing very poorly in tips and revenue on your channel, DSP.
It's pretty much almost the same. When it comes to that, not even sure exactly what they've improved or changed.
Then why are you fucking playing it? You are obviously not a fan. I'd be generous by calling you a tourist. You're just some stranger on the sidewalk. Again, clout chasing AAA clout just for clicks and views. I'm not gonna watch some guy who couldn't give a fuck less about the game play the damn game. However, I will write painfully long scripts about how much I don't like it.
Neo 2 was basically the same as the first one, but better, and you'll never catch me framing that in a bad light. Some games just don't need to reinvent themselves that much. They could just be more of the same, except with more polish and some extra mechanics on top of the old ones, and it'd be fine. Dragon's Dogma was fine back then, except for a few core issues that I personally had with the open world and exploration. Beyond that, there were serious issues with the pacing and presentation of the story and narrative, most of which just made it look like a Franken game of sorts. I don't remember the finer details now, and I'm too lazy to look it up, but I'm fairly certain the first one was a product of development hell and time constraints, and it shows. Nevertheless, the foundations and mechanics are solid enough for it to garner a cult following, to the point where Dragon's Dogma 2 had a successful release with a shit ton of people playing it, despite the performance problems it's having across all platforms. And I'm not going to chalk it up to just one reason, but Capcom basically gave us more of the same except a bit better, and with stronger narrative and more focused story progression. And even then, it still has cryptic quests and where the fuck do I go styles of moments. But again, this is a staple for this game, so I'm not exactly sure what the complaint would be, aside from disliking the mechanic in its entirety.
The pawn system is unique and refreshing. You yourself are a character that will always level up, and you have one pawn that will always be your partner and level up along with you in the game. But then you have two pawns that you summon at any time during any one of the town segments, or out in the world you can find these summoning spots, and basically they're just static characters that don't change, and they are fun, and then you can change them up whenever you're leveling up. Let's say you start at level 8 and all of a sudden you're level 10. Well, you probably don't want a level 7 or 8 person with you. So then you get rid of them. You go to another summon point. You summon some more pawns that are actually real characters other people created. And it's pretty neat in that regard because it always keeps it moving and rotating with your cast.
Literally all of what you just said applies to the first game. I have to ask, who the fuck is the target audience for these videos? Is it the people who are already watching you play the fucking game, because I don't think they need a recap? Is it people who aren't watching you play that game but watch you play other games? In that case, they don't give a fuck. Also, why even have a daily wrap? If I'm interested in what you're doing, I'll go get caught up by watching the fucking content. Seems like he's just shitposting videos for clicks and views.
I'm really not gonna go and be a fanboy about this because you don't really need to hear from me, but that power mechanic in Dragon's Dogma is one of the best features of these games, period. And in Dragon's Dogma 2, it's better than ever, with pawns having even more interactions than in the first game. They can guide you through quests by taking you through the objectives if they had completed them in another world. They provide valuable insights against enemies beyond just repeating the same lines over and over, and much more. Being able to interact and play with other players' pawns is some of the most fun you can have in this game, and make it feel like you're actually collabing with people towards a common goal, and you aren't even actually playing with anybody else. It's like co-op, but for loner folks like me. Very cool.
And, you know, for the most part, the open world structure is interesting because you can wander around and do as much side content as you want.
So the open world structure is interesting because it has open world features. Excuse me 1 minute while I paint the wall with my fucking brains.
I'd be curious to see what a lot of people are saying about this style of content, because when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, DSP was adamant that his fans were telling him not to do any of the side content, and that he was frustrated at the mixed messages between them wanting him to either skip the content or that they wanted him to do everything. But now, with Dragon's Dogma 2, it's suddenly a good thing that there's a lot of side content, so I guess we'll have to wait and see if DSP actually references this contradiction, though I'm leaning towards the fact that he'll make up his mind based on the amount of money he'll be making from the Dragon's Dogma 2 streams. There's really only two options here as far as I can tell: painfully long playthrough with cringe takes and bad gameplay, or an early wage quit.
Like, you could just beeline through story elements, or you can explore more and do optional fights and get optional items. And that's really where some of the big appeal of the game is, the amount of freedom it gives you. You know, today I had fought a giant cyclops that I found in the open world before I had ever even encountered one in the story. Later on, hours later in the story, you actually run into one, and the game treats it like, oh, that's the first time, but I'd already beaten one.
No, the game treats it like a tutorial. Regardless of your exploration, as part of the required story, you're guaranteed to face this one, and it uses that as a learning experience. Goddamn, you're fucking stupid.
You can do the tutorial segment in Elden Ring at basically any point in the game, and the game will explain to you the basic mechanics, even if you're already by the end game. This is what I mean when I say either DSP is just that regarded, or he's just plain dumb whenever he plays these new games. This isn't something out of the ordinary, and it's basically just one of those things that's game agnostic and goes beyond the specific game you're playing, and this is at a meta level, or behind the scenes, if you will. You really shouldn't be surprised that you get a tutorial prompt when fighting a specific monster, even when it's possible that you already fought this monster beforehand through your free exploration, because in the dev's intended vision, this would be the first time fighting a Cyclops for the vast majority of players. If you're already a Dragon's Dogma fan, you will absolutely know how to fight Cyclops, and this tutorial just isn't for you. On top of that, if you're a Dragon's Dogma fan, odds are that as soon as you got free reign, you just headed out of the starting camp and started exploring just to get a feel for this new world, upon which these tutorials, again, wouldn't apply to you. But for a newer style player who is just getting familiar with this game and that might be following the story quest closely just to learn the basics, then this tutorial would probably be quite relevant, especially since you only really learn how to grab, release, and throw objects before that point, and don't really learn how to climb monsters until that moment. And even despite all that, this is just a cope because any person with fairly decent gamer sense will go out and explore and experiment with the different mechanics, including grabbing enemies, throwing them against other monsters, and so on. And in the case of bigger enemies like the Cyclops, you'll see your own pawn and other pawns even climbing it at times, cluing you into the fact that you might be able to climb them yourself. You just have to figure out how to do it, which I 100% do not expect DSP to do unless chat tells him how.
So, yeah, really neat. And today, I got through many segments. I think I went to 3 different towns. We ended up at the end of the stream in the capital city. Got a little confused there because the capital city is huge, and there's all these quests you're given immediately, and they're like, oh, go sneak around at night and do this one, and I can't find a way to do it. I'm completely stumped on how I'm supposed to do it. But I'm having a good time with the game so far, and the one criticism everyone has is the frame rate. The frame rate of the game is poor on everything. It's not even just, oh, one platform has it bad. No, the game does not run well on most platforms, and people are pretty frustrated about that. Outside of the frame rate, the graphics are great. Like, the detail and the effects of spells and things are really good, but man, that frame rate chugs. You know, it's around 30. Every once in a while it could go above 30, but it's mostly 30, and then when you're in combat, it sometimes could go to like 20. That's not good. You know, a game like this.
Yeah, I do know. Want to know who else knows? Capcom. That's why they put out a statement that they're aware of the issue and are working on a fix. For PC, not for you. Get fucked.
Yes, that's all fine and well, but I'm gonna make a prediction here. If DSP continues playing Dragon's Dogma 2, he will eventually get frustrated to the point of asking his jet to hold his hand through these fairly cryptic quests. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a step up from the first one in most things, except maybe performance, at least on my machine, but it still has some fairly unintuitive quests that don't really tell you where to go or what to do in some cases, and you just have to figure it out for yourself or look it up online.
It should be running better. It's not acceptable that Capcom couldn't get their RE engine to run better for this style of game, but that's the only engine they're developing games on now. So I guess they had to do the best of what they had, right?
Oh my god, I'm getting pissed off again. People like you are the issue, DSP. Do you remember that Shadow of War playthrough he did where he was bitching about people boycotting the game over microtransactions only to realize at the very fucking end everything other people were saying was true? He gave excuses like, well, just don't buy the MTX, and continued on playing the game. Here's the reality check, fat ass. They already have your fucking money! They have no reason to not put MTX in. You think it's a lot of dev work to add this shit in? No! You're voting with your wallet. When you buy this game and don't refund it, you are telling the company that you will accept the slop that they just fed you. This is why I don't eat at Jimmy John's anymore, because I'm boycotting their owner. I'm voting with my wallet. Do you know what happens when their sales start to go down in response to predatory MTX? They stop fucking doing it.
I wish Capcom would just stop shitting on their promising new games with these microtransactions, and I'd agree with Engine Seer Daikun here, but I don't really think the case applies in this reality, at least not with Capcom's game. Yeah, they already have your $70, so they have no reason not to add microtransactions, that's true, but I wonder how many people are actually buying red and yellow ore packs in DMC games, or the ridiculously huge number of cosmetics, emotes, and other stuff in the recent Monster Hunter PC games. I'd argue there's some form of point or merit for the latter microtransactions, but I can't help but harken back to the days when you could just actually unlock tons of these extra things and cosmetics simply by playing the game. And I'm not saying there still aren't games that do this kind of thing, but I feel it's also the exception nowadays. And specifically in the case of Capcom, I can safely say that they definitely don't see it the way I do, at least not anymore. Well, of course, this is just conjecture, and I can't really say for myself that as a trend, this actually generates some sort of significant revenue for Capcom or any other business that does it. I'd go with a hard no, but still, I can't argue with the fact that it literally costs them no money to open up these ridiculous MTX stores in their games. It's nothing, nada, no cost, except is it really? You're basically trading your integrity and image for the sake of making a few extra bucks, and that's just sad.
Listen, we need to have a talk about Vanderhoff. The fact is, he's the sponsor. And you signed a contract guaranteeing him certain concessions, one of them being a spot on the show.
Well, that's where I see things just a little differently. Contract or no, I will not bow to any sponsor.
Sorry you feel that way, but basically it's the nature of the beast.
Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but for me, the beast doesn't include selling out. Garth, you know what I'm talking about, right?
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
I can't talk about it anymore. It's giving me a headache.
Here, take 2 of these.
Ah, new print. Little, yellow, different.
Look, you can stay here in the big leagues and play by the rules, or you can go back to the farm club in Aurora. It's your choice.
Yes, and it's the choice of a new generation.
You know, for someone with a business degree, you sure are fucking dumb. I don't even mean dumb in a business sense, just fucking dumb in general.
So, we had epic fights against groups of enemies, giant, kind of mini boss enemies that are almost like a hybrid of Shadow of the Colossus and other RPGs to fight. Great world exploration, learning all kinds of different, systems like the crafting system and everything. That will be the one other criticism that I will lay on the game. It, much like the Dark Souls series, it doesn't tell you how to do half the stuff. You just either need to figure it out yourself, by chance in some cases, or someone has to tell you,
This is what we, in the business, call a fucking lie. Every Souls game has a tutorial. Dark Souls 1 had the Undead Asylum that taught you basic controls, Dark Souls 2 had Things Betwixt and a rather extensive tutorial, Dark Souls 3 had the Undead Graves. All of these games teach you the basic controls. Aside from that, every mechanic is built upon these basic controls. The only esoteric concepts I can even think of are appropriate catalysts for your school of magic, except, oh shit, look at that. Some spells do mention the use of a catalyst, so it's not even as bad as he's trying to make it out to be. Aside from that, you have things like adaptability being rather vague, power stancing not being explained at all, and maybe bonfire aesthetics could be a bit more clear. That's it. And you know what? This is what I'd call gamer shit. Gamers will press buttons to see what they do. They'll experiment with mechanics. They'll wander around to see what's where. This is just how gamers work in general. We are inquisitive and explorative for the most part, but DSP, the guy who says he's the average gamer and is just like us, this is below him. Huh? You want me to just figure it out? The game respects my intelligence enough to discover it on my own? Fuck that, dude. I need a tutorial. I did that as hard as I could and now I'm in pain. How the fuck does this guy live?
You know, I hate to be that type of tech priest, but gamer shit to me also includes to some extent Googling stuff. There are things that are so obtuse that you'll need to Google them to find out in detail exactly how they work, which is a negative on the game itself if you ask me. You should never have to look up a third-party website just to learn how an in-game mechanic works, unless this mechanic is supposed to be hidden or difficult to figure out. The biggest exceptions to this I can think of off the top of my head would be those super complex games like Factorio or Dwarf Fortress that, well, if you add an in-game tutorial, which they do have, it's just a lot of text, which shouldn't really matter since it's the point of the game. You're not supposed to learn it all in one sitting, or much less through some inane tutorial that the game presents you with. You're supposed to study these games, and I hate to reference DSP when he says he studies games, but some games are so complex that it just requires it. Another example that comes to mind is power stancing in Dark Souls 2, but not how to actually use it, but the whole thing with the stats and how much strength and dexterity you need to actually power stance a set of weapons, and so on. Of course, mentioning Googling and looking things up to DSP would basically constitute researching and studying the game, dude, so it's impossible for him to do it on his free time because he has no free time. He's here 6 days a week full time, dude, and when he's not, he's spending time with his wife. When is he ever gonna have time to look stuff up and practice to improve his content, dude?
Absolutely disgusting, and I wish bad things upon you.
So I'm streaming, and I'm like, man, I don't know how I'm supposed to get this thing. Oh, you could craft it in your inventory. How? Well, you just got to figure it out. It's there. There's a thing that says combine. You can just mess around. Why didn't it have a tutorial for that? Don't bother with it. Same thing with like climbing enemies and stuff. They don't explain it till you run into the Cyclops in the story. But you can run into other bigger enemies way before that and have no clue what you're supposed to do to take them down. They never explained it.
But there was a tutorial for combining, Phil. It's right there at the start of the game when you get the first mission to deliver a list of ingredients to that one guard guy and he asks you to fetch the ingredients for him. You get a prompt about the combining system then and there, and even if there weren't, this isn't the first game you've played that has a crafting system. See, this is one of the things I hate the most about DSP. Even after 15 years of content creation and gameplay, every game he plays is like a blank slate to him, where previous meta-knowledge on the inner workings of games are completely erased. So now if the game isn't completely explicit about this one mechanic that is quite popular in gaming in general, then it means that the game is shit and it didn't explain the mechanic, and how was he supposed to know, dude? They never explain how to kill any of the monsters either. You just gotta experiment and figure it out, or have a pawn call out the weaknesses to guide you. Is he actually expecting the game to have a Pokédex style encyclopedia with exact strategies on how to beat enemies and other important information? Well, shit, I think that actually would be pretty based. But just because I'm a sucker for in-game B-series, and not because something as stupid as expecting the game to explain how to do every single thing.
I said it before and I'll say it again, this is just gamer shit. Except for Phil, I think this goes a step further. He doesn't want to turn his brain on for anything. He wants the game to explicitly tell him what to do. I'll most likely get a lot of shit for this, but the new God of War games are absolute dog water. We went from a visceral, cinematic beat 'em up to what effectively amounts to The Last of Us with a bald dude, and boy, there's a reason he liked those games, because they literally tell you what to do in order to progress at every step of the way. That's Phil's style of games. A game where you're expected to explore and discover the secrets of the lands on which you travel? I sleep. Imagine this fat ass playing Factorio. He'd never figure out efficient designs for anything.
But even so, that's part of the wonder of Dragon's Dogma and a lot of open world games in general, Phil. I really haven't been a fan of open world stuff in a while, with some exceptions, but the first Dragon's Dogma was my shit. It was one of the first games I got all the achievements for when it came out on Steam, and I played it a lot on the PS3 as well. And while I can't play it anymore because the world no longer holds any mysteries for me and the constant back and forth through these known lands is boring for me now, I absolutely enjoyed my time with the game. It was one of those titles that tickled my sense of wonder and exploration, just running around the world. Well, if you ask me today, that kind of world is boring to me by virtue of having more games and genres I've grown interested in through the years, but that's neither here nor there. Some of my favorite parts were just that, exploring unknown areas and finding missable and optional quests that gave me challenges and more gear and experience. On the flip side, it was totally possible for me to run into tough enemies that I wouldn't even be able to beat with my current level, and more importantly, with my at the time limited knowledge about the game. But even when I was dying or winning, the combat and gameplay was always a marvel, especially when playing spellcaster classes like the mage or the sorcerer, with all those awesome and weighty animations and huge casting times. You're really not supposed to take these enemies out as soon as you meet them, DSP. I mean, you could if you know what you're doing, though even then it'll probably take a while. But if you're too weak and getting your ass kicked, then it might be a good sign to just fuck off and come back later when you're more experienced. If he played Dragon's Dogma 1 in the past, why is this concept so foreign to him when his first game was more cryptic and unintuitive than Dragon's Dogma 2? This should already be known to DSP, but again, blank slate with every game, so I guess he can either play dumb and act like his usual regarded self, or he legit has issues and actually doesn't know what to do. Which is funny, to be honest.
He won't just come back later. Haven't you seen the Elden Ring This Is How You Don't Play? The guy held his audience hostage while he smacked his forehead against everything as soon as he ran into it. I mean, this motherfucker was at over 10 deaths against a kindred boss outside of Geraint's room before he realized I should probably come back later. Also, quick note, while I was looking into this, I found a Memology video citing that in one session he spent over 2 hours fighting this boss. Link below.
But it's like, man, if you didn't play the first game, you're at a big disadvantage in this one.
No, you're just a fucking moron. Dragon's Dogma 2 is effectively Dragon's Dogma 1.5, similar to how Nioh 2 was essentially a polished Nioh 1 with more stuff on top of it. I mean, that and Living Weapon was completely gutted. Dragon's Dogma 2 isn't built on the premise that you played the first game. That's why it has tutorials that you conveniently skip or straight up forget about. The issue is, as I said, you're just not smart enough to play these games, and with how dumbed down modern games are, that's kind of a red flag.
Still having tons of fun. You know, after 5.5 hours, I had a great time. The audience was a mixed bag. What I mean by that is some people loved it. They were like, wow, this is very refreshing because unlike the other RPGs, it's a lot of action. Like there's anytime you're in the open world, there's tons of action going on and people like that. Some people are like, oh, it's just another RPG again and we don't want another one. You know, you already have RPG overload. Why are you playing this one? Which I explained. I'm only playing it for a day. We're going to finish up the 2 that I'm playing, and then we're going to come back to this after the fact. I'm not just playing this nonstop, okay?
And there you have it, the audience segment. I knew what's coming, and yet I still struggle to understand this guy, especially when thinking back a few days to his rants about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and low support. Both games have tons of action and fun fights, while also having slower parts with dialogue, exploration, and running around just taking in the sights and doing nothing more than essentially being a visual tourist. In fact, a lot of the Dragon's Dogma 2 exploration is quite different from Final Fantasy VII, particularly since fast traveling is a lot more limited, especially at the beginning. The distances between towns and settlements are long, winding, and can get surprisingly dangerous to the point where you could get lost for a while, only to have your adventures cut short by an enemy ambush or by simply fucking up and falling to your death, or dying to any of the countless hazards in the game. With all that being said, why doesn't this game get a rant or a bitch fest? I know I predicted that the rants will come when he actually starts playing the game, and it's not like I enjoy when he does these stupid segments, but it just goes to show you how fickle and inconsistent DSP is with his takes. You know what's different with this game? Dragon's Dogma 2 is supposed to be a one-time stream, after which he'll go back to Baldur's Gate 3 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to finish them before returning to Dragon's Dogma 2, which is exactly why there isn't a rant about low support or revenue. This isn't supposed to be a long playthrough, at least not yet. That's why we don't get a bitch fest. If you ask me, he's leaving for tomorrow what he could have done today. But at least this means we'll have an inevitable Dragon's Dogma 2 rant where he'll threaten to rage quit the game unless people step up and buy in, you guys. But in DSP's world where his dents are constantly hypnotized through their snort vision goggles, this is just another day in the office for Dave.
On the topic of this ridiculous RPG overload bitching, all I have to say is, what the fuck is wrong with you? You are the one deciding what to play. You're not obligated to play every new game. He skipped plenty of them. Still waiting for that Code Vein playthrough, Dave. So why is it okay that he can skip Code Vein but can't skip Final Fantasy VII Crap Birth? Why couldn't he skip Infinite Wealth? Shit, I would have liked if he skipped that one, since absolutely no one can stand his criticisms of Japanese culture. Yet another Maid Cafe rant, yet another "this is what the Japanese find funny" rant, when he can't even define the cancer in his own culture. I mean, this guy is still balls deep in his own ass over his authentic, robust style Italian heritage when he's got more drops of Italian blood in his body than functioning fucking neurons.
So, and then you have people who, like, I guess it didn't show up today because, like, the first stream had pretty good attendance. The late stream did not. So I guess people already, after one streamer, burn out. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Very similar to what happened with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. People showed up for the first stream. They were engaged. After that, kind of died out. I'm going to be honest with you guys. All these RPGs are just too much. I know it for a fact. Even though I really like this one, it's very different from the others. For a viewing audience, people don't want to come to this channel and just watch an RPG constantly, and that's all that's fucking coming out.
I said it before in another video, and I'll say it again here. There are simply games that are very difficult to make entertaining for the viewer. Unless you have a vested interest in the game, there are titles that would just be boring and awful to watch. And whenever you're not fighting or doing something challenging, then I'd say Dragon's Dogma 2 fits the bill for one of these boring as fuck games to watch DSP play. He's just boring and has nothing interesting to say about the games he plays. His longest segments are about food and wrestling, and even the latter isn't common at all anymore, as they're being replaced by drama shit that DSP totally doesn't want to get involved with, you guys. So I guess, in a sense, DSP is sorta right when he says it's the game's fault, in the same vein that you can blame a math test for being hard when you haven't studied and are simply naturally not very gifted at math. I suppose you could prepare yourself and practice to try and improve as an entertainer, but unless DSP gets very endearing and charming very quickly, then these games will just be out of his grasp when it comes to making them fun or palatable. I mean, have you ever seen some of his RPG playthroughs, especially in the case of the older ones? This man just sits there, mouth agape, snorts aplenty, just fucking reading the dialogue between the characters and giving his boring as sin commentary, which is basically repeating what the characters just said, which is what he just read seconds ago. Oh god, I just remember his most recent Pokemon playthrough where he actually did voice acting for the characters. Shit dude, I cringed so hard at that I couldn't even finish watching the This Is How You Don't Play. By the way, shout out to The Outsider, his This Is How You Don't Plays are awesome.
Really, it's ridiculous, the fucking tremendous amount of RPGs that are still coming out, as if these game developers have no fucking conscious thought about them. The game landscape has too many right now.
You have to be a genuine fucking asshole to even make this statement. I'm gonna recap DSP and be really mean here. Who is this jackass? He was some fat alcoholic asshole recording bad gameplay and even worse humor with the camera sitting on his coffee table. He then went on to groom an underage girl and treat her like a house daughter wife. He then stabbed his friends in the back, moved across the country, went into $500,000 in debt, used his parents, used their health to milk his fans, used a fucking rescue cat to milk his fans, and after all of this, he thinks that he's not only famous enough but also important enough for an entire fucking industry to bend over backwards to cater to him and his stupid fucking schedule that he can't shut the fuck up about.
Sure. What the fuck?
Like I said before, he skipped games in the past. He most likely won't play Stellar Blade because this manchild has a deadly fear of attractive girls. Honestly, this would explain his wife. So why is he doing all this bitching over RPGs? This is literally that Tyler the Creator meme. Just don't play them. But we can't do that. We can't just not play something except when we can, because we need to bitch, we need to complain, we need to turn this molehill into a mountain and make a big deal of things. We can't just restart the game or load an older save when the game glitches. This guy just brings the mood down in any situation he's put into. He says these streams are fun and entertaining. It's not entertaining to watch someone who's old enough to be your parent scream at a video game. It's not fun to listen to somebody constantly fucking complain. Simply put, stop bitching so much, which is kind of ironic coming from me in this video.
So if you enjoyed Dragon's Dogma 2 today, let me know. like the videos on my channel if you enjoyed them, and leave comments on them, and let me know your thoughts about this game, and if you want to see it in the rotation and all of that, okay? I had a great time with it personally. I can't wait to get back to it, and it sucks now we have to wait like a week, but we got to finish these lingering playthroughs, okay?
I know this is a YouTuber thing, but don't tell me to like your video. I can see the fucking like button. I'm not fucking stupid. I will literally thumbs down every video asking me to like it. If I actually liked it, I'll give it a fucking like. Also, leave a comment? Why? You Gestapo style will moderate every comment that comes in to verify it's only praise or a benign criticism. Imagine having enough time to click verify on literally every comment on your channel, but don't have enough time to adopt a hobby, learn a skill, exercise, or invest in yourself. At all. Disgusting.
Well, you know who doesn't have to wait weeks to enjoy the game due to sticking to some fucking stupid schedule? Me! Except it's not DSP, obviously, but me. I'm gonna go play now. So thanks a lot for watching the video, especially if you got all the way to the end. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz, and stay tuned for the next one. Okay, thanks, bye.
I'm giving this video a thumbs down because of you. Fuck you.